Dead Air Studios presents The Pain Chaser 1, Ambuscade, by Patrick E. Malloy, read for you by the author. This recording is released under a Creative Commons 4.0 license, so feel free to share it with your friends or enemies, but always give appropriate credit. This story is not intended for children and contains profanity, violence, and disturbing content that some people may find offensive. If you're in doubt, please turn back now, as you may find that some doors, once opened, refuse to be shut. Anton and David slid silently into the second-floor corridor, looking for any sign of the creature. Seeing nothing, they made a beeline for the door that led to the roof access. "Did you hear what she said?" Anton asked him as they walked. "The vessel got him." "She must have been talking about Rob." "Why do you call it the vessel?" David asked. "Because that's what the text calls it." The cop nodded without saying anything. "How is it you're staying so calm through all this?" "I'm a police officer," Dave said simply. "We're trained to deal with stress. Tune it out while we do what we need to do." "I can't imagine that they train you exactly for this type of situation," Anton said more to himself than to David. "What made you want to be a cop?" David gave him an appraising look before he answered. "I got sick a couple years ago. Makes you really examine your own mortality." "Sick how?" Anton asked. "AIDS," David said, and Anton wished he hadn't asked. A long, awkward moment passed between them. "So, that's why you became a cop?" Anton asked. "Because you wanted to help save lives? Reduce the amount of pain and suffering in the world?" Dave let out a single mirthless chuckle and said, Yeah, something like that." They threw open the door to the roof and stepped once again into the biting cold. "Watch that door," David said as he went to get the supplies from the helicopter. "If anyone comes through, yell." Anton watched for any movement at all, intent that he would not let the creature get the drop on them. He was going to survive this thing. He clutched the book of Adumbril verses against his chest, shivering from the cold. But watching the door had been a miscalculation of judgment, because the attack did not come from that direction at all. It came instead from the very place they had come to search. As David backed out of the helicopter with the promised blanket and first aid kit, he saw the creature rise up, spider-like, from the helicopter's tail. Annie held Tabby in her arms as well as she could with her own injuries, trying to share some of her precious body heat and shushing her like a baby. Tabby shivered violently. Her fear lifted off her as an actual, perceivable smell. It was the smell of blood and sweat. The boys had not returned as quickly as she would have liked, and she was beginning to worry. She told herself it had not been as long as she believed, attempting to calm her nerves. It didn't help much. Time seemed to crawl by, and about her, the shadows gathered viciously.
"Do you think we're going to live through this?"
Tabby asked her, breaking the silence. Abby looked at her. The eyes looked calmer, saner.
"Yes, of course."
It was a question she'd been careful not to ask herself. She was afraid of what her answer would be if she were honest.
"It killed Rob. I know it did. There wasn't anything I could do. But I could hear him pleading with it."
Tabby's voice was low and disturbingly monotone.
"We were together when it attacked. Like having sex. He was on top of me when it tore into him."
Annie could feel her fingernails through her shirt, gathering the material into bunches. A sob was seeping back into her voice now.
"I could feel him inside of me. I couldn't move, and I could feel his body go limp while he was inside of me."
She looked up at Annie, her eyes streaming.
"Why is it doing this to us?"
she asked.
"Why does it hate us so much?"
Annie shook her head.
"I don't think it does exactly. I think it's just sadistic. I don't really think it cares who is hurting."
Tabby nodded and buried her face in Annie's shoulder. 7 people had passed through the school that day. Now 3 of those 7 were dead, and the 4 that remained were not in excellent condition, especially Annie. One of her arms was utterly useless, and her ankle was severely sprained, possibly fractured. Admittedly, their chances did not look good, but Annie did not want to accept the fact that she may never see Henry again, that she may never get the opportunity to experience motherhood.
Do you think it got them?
Tabby asked.
No, I don't.
Annie was honest this time. Dave was made of hard stuff, and Anton had turned out to be much more capable than she would have given him credit for. She didn't believe that it was imprudence. She could see that he was afraid, but he'd been the only one to think through every move that they made. She felt the rest of them had merely been running from one hiding spot to another with no real plan of how to escape, trusting in the promise of more police to come to rescue them. Her thoughts went back to the claustrum, the strange pyramid artifact wrapped in the sheet. David carried it now. It seemed that one object was the heart at the center of all of this horror. Could it really contain the essence of some deranged pain god? The idea was ludicrous, but under the circumstances, it seemed the only thing that made sense. Half of the things that they had experienced that day were impossible, yet they had happened. From above, she heard footsteps on the stairs. 2 sets. David and Anton. They were okay, but they were also coming fast, running. Being chased? She and Tabby looked up in unison. Anton and Dave were panic-stricken, and the thing was right on top of them. Its bulk came through the upstairs door so forcefully that it literally unhinged it. It thundered after them, taking the upper staircase with 2 leaps. Luckily, the momentum carried it into the far wall with a stunning blow, giving the 2 hunted men a few extra seconds to their lead. Annie grabbed a hold of the axe and stepped in front of Tabby, preparing to defend her from the monster as Anton and David reached them. She knew she could not run, not anymore. It would catch her without difficulty on her bad foot. She had to make a stand, live or die. Dave turned and fired, but as before, the creature barely seemed to even notice the bullet. Then, it was right in front of her, bearing down on her. She brought the axe up with her one good arm and swung at the creature's exposed neck. But the creature was faster. Its forearm caught the shaft right under the blade and wrenched the axe from her grasp, sending it spinning into the dark. Its weight crashed against her, knocking her from her feet. It should have had her then, but Tabby came miraculously to her rescue. She put herself between the creature and Annie, throwing her chest out and staring up at the creature, a burning hatred in her eyes.
Fuck you,
she told it in a voice that was mystifyingly calm and full of force.
You're not killing anyone else.
It seemed to have other plans, however. Its massive claw clamped about Tabby's neck and lifted her into the air. She gasped and choked furiously, trying in vain to tear away the giant hand that was crushing her throat, choking the life from her. Her legs kicked at nothing. Annie saw her chance. The iron bar that Tabby had attacked David with lay forgotten at the monster's feet. She snatched it up, and while it was distracted with Tabby, took a careful aim at the monster's head. With her good arm, she swung as hard as she could, leaping into the air and ignoring the flare of pain that laced up her leg from her sprained ankle. The bar collided with the side of the monster's head with an almighty thwack. For a moment, she didn't think it had had any effect at all, and then, all at once, the creature dropped Tabby and fell lifeless to the floor. Tabby came to her knees and drew a gasping breath. Anton was at her side instantly, draping the blanket from the helicopter around her shoulders. Annie could see that the white on one eye had gone blood red. The monster lay motionless where it had fallen, and Annie stared in disbelief at what she had done. Jesus, Annie, Anton said. How the fuck?
It's not dead,
Annie said.
It's still breathing.
Get away from it, David warned.
Hold on,
she said. She wanted to get a closer look at the thing's mask. One finger actually came out and touched it where it met the skin of the thing's neck.
Oh my god,
she said.
This isn't a mask at all. It's this thing's real face. It feels like it's made of rubber, but it's not. It's skin. What the hell is this thing?
I don't know, Dave said, but let's get out of here before it wakes up.
Fuck that,
Tabby said. She was on her feet again, and she was breathing better.
Let's finish it off.
I can't let you do that, Dave said. It may have killed innocent people, but murder is still murder. Tabby wheeled on him.
What? You want to arrest that thing? It's not fucking human! Do you even have handcuffs that'll go around its wrists? Let's just kill it and be done with it! We kill it, we win!
Dave stood his ground. If it's not human, then what the hell is it? He asked. Annie retrieved the axe from the corner, and for a moment she considered doing exactly what Tabby had suggested. It would be easy. One solid chop would split its skull open like a piece of firewood. Instead, she said,
No, Tabby. David is right. If we kill it, then we'd be just as bad as it is. It may not look human, but if what Anton read in that book is true, it was at one point. I still couldn't live with myself for killing a man.
Okay,
Tabby said, agreeing because it was Annie that was telling her. There was an unspoken connection now between the two women that could not be broken.
do we have anything we could use to tie it up or something? So it doesn't come after us again?
I do, Anton said, opening the first aid kit. Medical tape,
Medical tape?
Tabby said incredulously.
We've seen the thing tear doors off their hinges and pull people apart like they were dolls. You think medical tape is really gonna hold it?
It's all we have, Anton said. It's better than nothing,
No, wait.
Annie said.
Give me the sheet from the claustrum. We can twist that up and use it as a rope to bind its wrists.
David did as she asked. Her stomach turned when the little pyramid became visible again, but she bit it back, telling herself that it was all in her head. They tied the unconscious creature up, leaving it trussed like a pig in the hallway, and then built a makeshift bulwark of desks they found in a nearby classroom to keep it from escaping. The desks, of course, had been another manifestation of the school, but they seemed to be substantial enough. They pressed on a little more confident than they were before.
We should go get your clothes back.
Annie said a couple of minutes later. Yeah, wire, Anton started, but was cut short by a severe look from Annie.
I can't go back in there.
Tabby told her.
I can't see him again.
Don't worry, you don't have to. You just show me where the room is and I'll go in for you.
Annie said. Annie did not relish the idea of seeing Rob's remains either, but in her opinion, it was preferable to making Tabby relive the attack. She had to protect her. She had to protect them all. They retraced Tabby's steps backward through the hallway. Soon, they came upon the two bloodstains where Tabby had heard the ghost speaking. What the hell happened here? David asked, crouching to examine the spectral blood.
I don't really know,
Tabby said, but explained what she knew. Anton's eyes lit up. We have to go to the library.
What? Why?
Tabby asked. Well, he said, I'm not sure. It's just a theory. Just bear with me, okay? Annie nodded.
Clothes first, then the library. Agreed?
Agreed, Anton said. Agreed, David said. They continued on to the class where Rob had been killed. Annie and David slipped inside, leaving Anton to watch over Tabby in the hall. Annie had held out some small hope that they would still find Rob alive and just badly injured, but the man was most certainly dead. The corpse was in bad shape. The impact of the kick that had finished Rob had made hamburger of his face. It had actually cleaved his collar entirely in two and torn his arm away from his body. It hung from a long, jagged strip of meat that ran from where his shoulder had been connected to the bottom of his pectoral muscle. The upper ribs were exposed, as well as something peeking through, smooth and raw, that Annie feared may have actually been the man's heart. She was surprised to find that, after all she'd experienced today, the grisly scene shocked her worse than anything else. She remembered holding onto Rob's arm earlier that morning, clinging to him like a scared child. Now that arm was barely attached. She turned aside and retched, coughing and dry heaving. Are you okay? Dave asked her.
Yeah,
She said, smiling at him.
I guess this is just something you really can't get used to.
Some people can, he said. If you can't, I think you're doing just fine. She nodded.
Let's get the clothes and get out of here.
She dug through the pile of clothes, separating Tabby's from Rob's, and carried them out into the hall. The men turned away as Tabby slipped out of the blanket and into her clothes. Annie laughed at how odd this seemed now. The woman had been entirely nude for the last few hours, but the act of dressing was still a private one.
Okay.
Tabby said when she was done.
All right. So, on to the library.
Annie said, pointing with her axe.
What do you expect to find there, Anton?
Tabby asked. I'm not sure yet, Anton said. Answers, I hope. I'll explain when we get there. Even knowing what he expected to see, Anton's jaw literally dropped when he opened the double doors to the library.
Jesus, where did all these books come from?
Tabby asked. Same place as everything else. The old lockers, the clock tower upstairs, even the bloodstains in the hallway. I'll bet you any amount of money that if you go to the classrooms, half of them be filled with desks by now. Like the ones we used to barricade the stairwell. Reality is being changed, reverted. The Kettle Creek High School of old is coming back to haunt us.
Why?
Tabby asked him. Why? That's kind of a hard question to answer, he said. It has something to do with that weird pyramid we have, the claustrum. According to the Book of Adumpral Verses, Eisotech's very presence influences things around him, causing them to manifest the traits that bring out anguish in the minds of those he feeds on.
But how would making the school turn back into its old self torture us?
Annie asked. Not us, he said. 50-some-odd people died here. It's meant for them, their spirits. This place is a prison to them. A reminder of the horrors they were forced to face. They were resting peacefully until we came along and woke them up. Now they're being forced to relive the nightmare of their deaths. They're radiating anxiety, giving it off like heat, and it feeds Eisotech, making him stronger. Tabby looked at him thoughtfully.
So, essentially what you're telling us is this place really is haunted, and that this evil god thing is torturing the ghosts that still live here to feed on them.
Anton gave her a look of dejection. Yeah, he said.
Okay.
She agreed, nodding. Okay? He asked, surprised at her lack of argument.
Yeah. Okay.
She said.
I mean, it makes sense to me. It's a bit far-fetched, but after the shit I've seen today, I'm willing to believe anything.
Okay, he said, smiling, and he noticed that Annie was smiling as well. If I'm right, the 2 bloodstains in the hallway are from the bodies of the 2 men that were shot and killed directly before the fire started. The school isn't just reverting, it's reliving its past, and it's going to burn down again. The smiles had disappeared from everyone's faces. And according to the newspapers from '67, it starts here, in the library, he finished. I smell gasoline, David said suddenly. I do too, Anton agreed. I smelled it when we first came in, but it's getting stronger now. He picked up one of the books off the shelf nearby at random and paged through it, then turned it towards the girls so they could see it. It was empty. Every page inside was blank.
What does it mean?
Annie asked. It supports my theory. This is a memory. The books here, they really exist. They have mass, but no writing inside. It's like a movie set, a photograph made real.
Does that mean the fire isn't real either? Like, no heat?
Tabby asked. I don't know, Anton said. I don't think so. The vessel was created by Eisotech too, and it was more than capable of hurting us.
So what do we do?
Annie asked.
What's your plan?
He looked at her seriously. I don't have one yet, but I think if we're going to come up with one, it has to start here. I think we need to find a way to prevent the fire this time around. Otherwise, this place is going to come down around us, memory or not.
Okay, what do we know about the original fire?
Tabby asked. Not much, Anton admitted. Gasoline was used as an accelerant. The doors were locked to the library with a lot of people trapped inside. That's really it.
Do you know who it was that was killed in the fire specifically? Who the intended target was?
Annie asked. He shook his head. Teachers and students. I'm hardly an authority on the subject. I'm just going off what I remember reading.
David, do you...
Annie began, but realized that the cop was no longer with them.
Where did he go?
Tabby and Anton looked around. The man had simply vanished. He must have gone out into the hall, Anton said. He stepped out to look. With a click, the door closed behind him. He turned, suddenly fearful, and tried to open the door. It was locked. Fuck, he said through the door. I said it myself. The doors were locked right before the fire. I'm a fucking idiot. He could faintly hear Tabby and Annie's voices from inside. "Hold on," he yelled through the door. "I should be able to get this back open from this side." There was a click in his left ear, and he turned to find himself looking at David down the barrel of the 9mm. "David, what?" he spluttered in disbelief. David was holding a black duffel bag that he'd never seen before. "I'm sorry it had to be you, Anton," he said. "I really am. I liked you. I'm sorry it had to be you and not that stupid bitch, Tabby. But I'm running out of time." He motioned with the muzzle of the gun, a gesture that obviously meant that Anton was to follow him. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you like what you've heard so far, please consider supporting my Patreon. I try to do this for free, but I do have to support myself somehow. Also, physical copies of my books are available